Hey everyone, welcome to the CSI Secret Store community call. Today is August 4th. This call is recorded and will be published to YouTube and falls under the CNCF Code of Conduct. Please add yourself to the attendees list. In terms of agenda, so I will be moderating the call. And does anyone want to help with the notes?
I can take notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. We have a pretty small agenda. I think the first one is follow up to Dane's PR, and then the second one I just added. Dane, did you want to talk about this one? I know you started a thread on Slack.
Yeah. So I can share my screen and kind of talk a little bit about the changes in the code.
Sure.
Based on just kind of what we talked about last meeting.
Sure. Let me give you access. Okay, can you try sharing now?
Let's give it a go. And we'll do desktop. Okay. Which screen can you see? Can you see VS Code?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let me move this little toolbar out of the way.
Nice.
Yeah. So like in my original implementation, for trying to help in syncing multiple secrets based on a file being mounted as a JSON object, I added this sync options field to the secret provider class, where the behavior was to tell the driver what it should expect that mount, what format that mount should be in, and then which path on the JSON object to target, and then sync all those secrets. And then in our discussion last week, based on Tommy's feedback, we mentioned that it might be better to actually just transform the mount, or do some transformation before the mount, so the driver receives a JSON object, and then we could tell the driver it should expect a JSON format, and then target a path where we can mount each key value pair as its own file, rather than mounting the whole JSON object as a file. So then that kind of ties into these changes here. So instead of transform options, or instead of sync options, it's transform options. And the expected behavior here is that like with the vault provider, if you don't specify a secret key, it just gives you the full JSON response. So with this object here, we should expect the full vault JSON response, and then the driver targets the .data path in that JSON response, and then mounts each key value pair as its own file. And like we could see that here with within the secret objects, I'm using the DB creds object name, and then the name of the file is the name of the key in the JSON object on that path. So just for the sake of being verbose and demonstrating the concept, I've targeted the individual username and password keys like we normally would with the driver now, in addition to targeting the full JSON object. And I've mounted those secrets as plain text secrets. So like in the terminal at the bottom, I'm in the container now, and if I run that ls, we could see we have two directories. There's the database directory and the DB creds directory. So if I ls into the database and I ls into the DB creds, we see the same information. The only difference being that for DB creds, we didn't actually have to make the effort to specify each key that we wanted to get from the vault secret. And also, we didn't have to specifically name the object name, like based on the full path, including the name of the file. The name of the file is based on the key that's found in the JSON object. And all of this is done right after the client mount call to the provider. So if files are detected in the response, then the driver will loop through those files and check to see if there's any that have a JSON format, and then from there it'll create new files, a new files list with those key value pairs found in the JSON objects created as their own files. So that was like the coding strategy.
I have one question here. I'm still confused on the part where how are we determining the JSON structure, because that is highly dependent on what provider is going to send back, right?
Mhm.
So like the dot data that you have mentioned in the SPC, right? That is specific to probably Vault. I'm not sure about AWS. But then each provider will have its own way of returning the objects, right? So how we are handling that? I mean, I see there was just like a map with interface there in the code, but then how exactly we are going to traverse in order to get the key value pair? How will it know like the first object or the first what we can say, the first layer of that JSON will always be key? What if it's a complex JSON object? I'm not sure if that's even going to be the case, but still.
Right. So I want to make sure I grab that first part of your question. You were mentioning, or you were asking, how does the driver like know which path to target, or because could you repeat the first question again?
Yeah. So mostly I'm curious how driver will always consistently parse the JSON written by the provider,
Mhm.
because each provider could have different JSON format. Or is there some kind of an assumption that we are making here while parsing the JSON content, or what's the logic behind that?
So like, I know this isn't true, but just for the example's sake, like if AWS returned a JSON object and its key value pairs, let's say they were just top level, they weren't nested like in the vault response, like data, then you could just like in the JSON path specify you want the top level, just that dot, or we could even just take it out altogether. The default could be look at the top level.
Sure. So the entry point is fine. Maybe I think it will help. Do you have like a JSON response from the vault or something like that?
Yeah. Let me go over. Response. Yep.
Okay. So are we expecting all the key value pair inside that data field all the time from the vault?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Sure. So like for it, so this is like a well-known data structure, I would say. So will it be the case with other providers as well? Is I'm trying to understand.
I think
Like,
so.
okay.
But I mean, what scenario do you think there would be where we could possibly see problems?
I don't know. So for example, and that's where probably I'm not sure whether, so I was mostly uh I was mostly curious about if there will be a complex JSON like within that data, or will there be a case? But I'm not sure if that's a valid question, to be honest. I mean, if you are not expecting, then I think it's pretty much straightforward then. Like we just give the entry point and that should work.
So even if it is a complex JSON, like the JSON is inside the value, right? Like as long as the user says like what key in the JSON to extract, like you don't really care what the value is. You're just going to present it as a string no matter what.
No, but that's the thing, right? So let's say consider within that data. Let's say you have data.db grade, and within that db grade you have password and username and those kind of thing.
Right. So in
So
that case, they would do .data.data.db cred. Like if they want to go all the way
correct,
in.
correct. But then, oh, so like if there are any other, so like let's say if there is any other like let's say I don't know db1 grade, and then again key value pair. So you mention like .data db grade .data db grade 1, like these two separate as an array, and then it will fetch it.
So,
Is
so
that be the case?
you're talking like the case where like both of these are their own individual JSON objects that have different shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, I don't
So,
think this has the flexibility to allow you to like, or actually, now
so
that you mentioned it,
my point
because
is,
like if if each of these keys had values that were individual JSON objects,
Mhm.
you can specify the in this secrets list here, you can
Got it.
specify an individual JSON path. So if one of them is different, you can target that specifically.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to get at it is basically like to certain extent at this point in the driver, we are expecting provider response to be in a certain type. Like that's the assumption probably that we are making. Like it will always be data, and then something, or whatever the response is from the provider. So I was curious, like, should provider return something for us to for driver to sort of uh, know what exactly the JSON format is rather than asking user or something like that. But I think that's going to be unnecessarily complex. This would just work fine. I'm clear now. Thanks.
Mhm.
How does Vault handle this thing today? So like what if there's another level of nesting in the JSON? Like does Vault handle that today? Like if it's not under data and if it's under data another data, like can Vault extract it from the JSON? Like the provider?
So I think like so you're saying like a key value pair as a secret in Vault where the value is a JSON object?
Right. So like instead of just having the data and then Vault returning data dot username data dot password, let's say under data there's another nesting which says data dot something. So then inside something you have username password. So you have data dot something dot username, data dot something dot password. Does Vault provider actually handle that today?
I'm not actually sure. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where that actually happens, and the only thing I can think of is that like a JSON object is a value to a key in
Right.
that secret, and um, I'm trying to imagine why someone would do that. I'm not sure if Vault actually extracts this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as a user, it's possible I just come in and then I already have a JSON blob. I just put that into like the external secret store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like an added value, but it doesn't necessarily have to be supported. Like I think that's what I'm getting at. Like I think we are already providing them like one level of extraction. Like maybe we can start with that and say like, hey, we can't do complex extractions where we'll go into your data and like strip each and everything, like understand it and do it. Like we
Mm-hmm.
can do that one approach. So that's why I was asking, have you gotten any of these questions in Vault? Like, has some Vault user come and said, like, hey, I have a JSON as a secret. Wait, can you extract it for me? Like, has that feature request ever come up?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think my question was exactly on the similar ground. Like, ideally, I mean, the way we have sort of written driver is like whatever provider gives, it's going to just write on the file system. On the similar thought process, provider should also give the expected JSON struct to driver so that it can parse without having any assumption. But I guess, as Anish was saying, like probably to begin with, we can have this non-complex scenario implemented, and then we can figure it out. If user ask, then we can have like another round of discussion. Like, how do we want to know JSON structure beforehand, for example,
Mhm.
in terms of driver. But this should be good, I guess, to begin with.
So, and then, like, how do you guys feel about the keys just being the name of the file? I mean, the user doesn't get to name it exactly what they want, but for some, I feel like that wouldn't actually be an issue. Keys are supposed to be unique anyways.
How does the alias thing going to work? Like we have the alias today, right? So they can change the name of the file, I guess.
I'm assuming alias is with Azure.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
wait,
providers can support it.
right. Okay, sure. Sorry, Anish, go ahead.
No, I'm saying providers can support. Like, it is Azure does support it, but that also means so technically they still don't lose out on it. So if let's say like they have a JSON, they provide object alias. So in the object alias, they still have the JSON, but they just can't. They don't have the flexibility to provide an alias for the extracted keys.
So could you repeat the last part? Sorry.
So if they say like, hey, I have this secret which is a JSON in Key Vault, and then they say object alias is foo, then foo will still have that, which is the same behavior as today. Foo will contain that JSON thing, but they just won't have the flexibility to define what the extracted file names will be.
Got it. Yeah.
But also, my guess is they might not really care what it is in the file system because at the end, they just want it in the Kubernetes secret as an extracted key.
That's true. Yeah. So I guess most of these scenarios that we are discussing will be highly case by case basis. So probably it would be best if we just gather a feedback and see where we want to take it.
Right. And at the end of the day, like my biggest goal with it was so that we could just have a scenario where like we don't have any of these extra listings and the secret provider class becomes easier to work with. So we don't have to specify an object name for every secret. And I think this puts it on track. And I think the transform options made the code actually a lot easier to work with. So I think that was a better route as well.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the PR yet. It's just been like the whole code freeze and everything. But hopefully, in the coming weeks, we'll take a look and then add reviews to it.
Sure. I do have to still push this up. I just wanted to run it by you first. And then if this looks all good and on track, I'll start adding all the testing and all that.
Yeah, I
Sounds good.
feel like just give us a few days to review it. Like once you get like initial reviews, then I would say like invest time in writing the test and all of that.
Gotcha. Okay, that sounds good.
Cool. Thank you, Dan. Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to discuss was I added this issue because I think there have been few other folks on Slack and like other communication channels that have been asking about this. So today the file system permission is configured by the driver automatically. So like it requires you to run as a root if you want to be able to access it. And then I think this feature request was specifically users saying like, hey, if I define like file system permissions and all of those, would you be able to like use that in the security context and say, okay, fine, like I will allow a different permission for this particular amount. I think it's a valid ask. I was thinking maybe we can start with a proposal, just run it by Sigoth and see like, hey, is this a reasonable idea? Because the permissions that we have today was set when we moved the project to Sigoth as a sub project. Like it was done as part of code review. So like that is where like storage and auth said like, hey, make this read only, don't allow write access, and then like set these permissions and all of that. So if we want to support it through the security context where we look at FS group and say like, okay, now we can override it, we can just write like a one pager and then just say, hey, Sigoth, this is something we want to do. Like, do you think we're doing anything wrong? And I think if we get an approval, we should probably just go ahead and do it because it opens up more scenarios for users. So they don't have to keep running the processor root just because they need to access the volume and all of those.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool.
But this is specifically for the file ownership, though, right? Like permissions, we are already able
Right.
to set it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. We had in the agenda items. Let's see if there's any other issues that we need to triage. This one just came in. This is specific to K3D. I think they have a different kubelet path. Okay, we can respond to that. Then this issue I created because Kubernetes already moved to Go 119 and we are still on 118. So like that can cause like lint failures and all of those. So right now I've pinned the E2E image to the 124, which is using 118. But now that 119 is out, we can update the driver and then also you update all of that. This one, I think, is an interesting one. So today in the driver, for Kubernetes secret, we only allow TLS key and TLS cert. And then this particular user wants to also do ca.cert in it. It should not be difficult for us to add support for this. But it's just I've been digging through the Kubernetes code to see like what are the supported keys and if we need to add any additional logic for extracting the values. But I can see this being a use case if they're syncing as a TLS secret for ingress purposes, because some of the ingress controllers need like a ca.cert as a separate thing. It can be the same value, but they just still need it.
I don't think we separate, I think Kubernetes separates it, right, today?
No, we do it in the driver actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a secret tutor. Yeah, so today we separated. So this error is coming from us saying like, hey, we only support TLS cert and TLS key.
Hmm.
But we need to look if they have like a CA cert key like over here. Like if Kubernetes supports it, then we can just add support for it.
Oh, that's what I was asking actually. I'm not sure if Kubernetes supports it.
Okay. Yeah, if they don't support it, we can still push back because like today we're just doing whatever Kubernetes says, like, hey, this is all allowed.
Makes sense.
Okay, we can look at this one. I
I
think
have a bit of an ad hoc agenda item too, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm gonna post an issue in the chat here. Number 948. I was pulled into a conversation on Twitter about a similar thing where there were like folks that were talking about being able to have the driver create Kubernetes secrets without involving a volume mount. Yeah, and I was just wondering because I haven't looked into this in the past. I did just find this issue too, so it looks like it's maybe something that's been talked about before. I was just curious what was talked about and like where we landed on that.
Yeah, I think the one you're referring to is actually a pretty old one. This
Right.
is the one.
I think static secret is something, I think we concluded that we are not going to support it, right? That is, so static secret is something like provider just send a bunch of key value pairs and driver is going to just write it. Oh, wait, I'm not sure if
Yeah. No, I think so.
Tommy
Xander,
implemented it. Oh, sorry. Good.
no, the static secrets I think GCP is doing, but I think this
Right.
is the one that Xander is referring to. So basically, users want. So today we mount, and then after we mount, what we do is we also sync that as Kubernetes secret, which means mount is mandatory. So like if you need to sync something, you still need to do these additional mounts, which in some cases you don't want to. So this was an issue created. It has received a lot of +1s. The only thing is the CSI driver is primarily for mounting, right? And then the sync secret was added as an optional thing on top of it. We've been discussing this on and off. If we need to support syncing as Kubernetes secret without the mount, then it would mean we either have to split the project and say like, hey, like sync secret is its own thing, which is we are just going to do it as a spin-off project. The only advantage of doing that is we will still support secret provider class. So if you're already using a secret provider class CRD with the CSI driver today, if we spin it off as a separate project, you will be able to use the same CRD, but that controller will only sync the Kubernetes secret and you don't have to do the mount. So that was one approach that we thought about. So I actually had a Google Doc that I presented to Sigath. It's just we didn't go back to it because there was like a time when not a lot of users were asking about it. But if it's coming up again, then we can see like, so two options, right? One is that's splitting each project. Like we just need to see like if that's a feasible design and then how far we can go with it. Or the second option is I think like there's also like some integration points with the projects that we can explore, which only sync as like Kubernetes secret. But I will share that Word doc with you, and then like maybe we can start seeing what we want to do with it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Sorry, Nilesh, do you want to add anything?
Oh no, that's the thing. I think I just wanted to say that static secret and these two are like different things probably. And yeah, we have been discussing this for a while now. But I think as you mentioned, the integration point with other project also, I think it has merits.
Yeah, I think we need to evaluate which of the two options make it easier for users, which is feasible, and then see what we want to do.
Well, in the conversation that I saw on Twitter, the one user was currently using the like AKV2.
KATS.
Yeah,
KATS, yeah.
and saying that they didn't want to rely on like two projects, and like it sounds like one of the routes you described would still be like two things to manage, but if it's relying on the same CRD, like that I feel like gets rid of some of that friction there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've been thinking about this one a lot. It's just that, I mean, so even with the driver today, like a very dirty way to support it is like we build some kind of like a mutating webhook, which will look at the CRD getting created, call the provider for the mount, not the mount, like call the provider to say like, hey, go get all of these secrets for me. And once it gets it, it will just create it as a Kubernetes secret, and that's it. So like that is one way to do it. But like the tricky thing is, does that have to be deployed with the entire driver? or if it has to run
Right.
standalone, then we have to make sure that providers are running on those nodes because we communicate using gRPC Unix domain sockets.
Well, and that was one of the things I was wondering with like, I think one of the first things you brought up, like, yeah, the project is like a CSI driver, and therefore, like, for working with the storage interface, like, and mounting. So I think if it is something we were to pursue, like an actual, like a separate controller that can rely on the same CRD is probably the most like sensible thing that like stays truest to the intent of the project.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'll share that doc and then we'll see, because I think God said it's a good idea. It's just they needed us to figure out how we're going to handle auth, right? Because with CSI, auth is pretty nice because kubelet gives you everything that you need. Like kubelet gives you the service account tokens and like it gives you all the auth things like which you need. But in case of a controller, if we can design it in such a way that the controller doesn't need God level permissions, like that will be great. Like if we can leverage the pod's identity, that was one key piece. So like if we are doing it, then like I think we can say, okay, this is the approach we're going to do, and then start writing a doc for it.
Could you share it with me as well, Anish?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll share it out. I'll share it on the Slack channel. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Xander. We can look at it again. Okay. Then I think apart from that, all the issues have been responded to. I think we need to set a milestone for the 1.3. We don't have to do it on this call. Like we can also like discuss on Slack. So I was thinking maybe like a month from now or 45 days from now, like we can set it so we just have enough time to work on all the items. Like none of that has been pressing, so I think like it's been fine because what we have today mostly works well. But yeah, we can see when we want to release 1.3. But having said that, like I think we will release a patch version next week for all the CVE patches that have gone in for the base image and the Go packages. And then I think for this PR, oh no, that was other PR. Yeah. For this one, I think Nilek has already responded. And this is to add like a custom namespace with the Helm chart. And then this one, we can take a look.
Oh,
Yeah, this is fine. Like we just need to tell them to move to manifest staging if this is something we wanted to support.
I think that's straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of test grid jobs, I think everything is mostly been passing. The flaky ones only had like 1 or 2 intermittent failures.
Oh, was that
Okay.
Azure upgrade that was
Yeah.
missing?
I mean, it failed 2 times in July, but I think after that's been passing.
Okay, I'll take a look at it because it's interesting because I think I was talking with another customer, I mean user. They created issue in Azure provider where I think it appeared to fail after upgrading to
Nah,
Kubernetes.
I don't think this. So this is not probably related to any of that. This failed at the build job itself. Like it was trying to
Oh,
build the image and it failed.
okay,
Hey, I can't connect.
okay. No correlation. That's good.
But yeah, other than that, I think it's pretty stable. Cool. I think yeah, that's it. We will cut the patch release next week. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.